Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. You can actually see me today. Maybe I shouldn't say anything yet. I don't want to jinx myself because I could totally still screw something up. But anyway, welcome to Drive Time with Matty. It's crazy to think this is already episode number 5 of Drive Time. Like that's crazy. Like it's already been a month and an extra week already. Like where does time go when we're having fun, right? But anyway, enough this small jibber jabber. Welcome to Drive Time on the Sideline Junkies podcast network. Of course, I am Matty Ice, your host of this hopefully hour. I think it'll be about an hour today. We'll see. Hold on, my cat's getting ready to jump across because anytime I'm on a Zoom, I have to have a cat near me. I have a lot of cats here. I don't want to profess the number of cats I'm wearing. But anyway, I digress. We're going off into a whole different tangent already this afternoon. But anyway, of course, we're going to start off with what jersey am I wearing today? We're going an old school Columbus Blue Jacket jersey. I'm going to go and explain why a little bit later on. I'm throwing my cat down because she's going to just continue to get in the way here if I just don't do that. So anyway, that's the real quick part here, what jersey I am wearing. And it is the old school Columbus Blue Jackets. This is like circa 2011, 2012, I think. One of their older logos, which I still like, but they haven't brought it back. So we'll see. Maybe they will later. But anyway, time to get going here. First, I'm going to start off with a couple of breaking news deaths, unfortunately, today. First one is rest in peace to Larry Dolan. He is the owner of the Cleveland Guardians / Indians, because most of the time when he owned them, they were the Indians. Passed away at the age of 94. Bought the team from Richard Jacobs in February 2000. Richard Jacobs, which is why it was originally called Jacobs Field, which is why a lot of Cleveland folks will still call it the Jake, because that was the nickname of the ballpark that they play in, which is now, of course, Progressive Field, but no one likes to say Progressive Field. So he bought the team in 2000. The Dolan family that has owned it, there's always been a lot of talk about this of the family owning it as being cheap, which you can definitely make that argument for. But yet the family, since they bought there, they've had the team the longest than anyone in Cleveland. They've figured out ways to have Cleveland still somewhat compete year in, year out, despite having a very small salary based on, the Dolan family's pretty much always let the baseball operations run it. They've done a great job of drafting guys. They've done a great job of bringing young players in. Unfortunately, what they don't do a good job of is keeping those then players. And that's where the debate will go of how Larry Dolan was as an owner for this team over time. I think maybe as time continues to pass, it might be looked upon better. Of course, one of the other big changes is he was the one that in the ownership when they decided to change the names from the Indians to the Guardians. Now his son Paul's been running the team really mostly the last 10 years, so he hasn't been involved in the day-to-day operations for the team. But at the same time, it is something that is interesting to see. So we'll see, how that all plays out. With this team, they did have someone buy in a couple of years ago too as a minority owner that is supposed to have the front line for that. I don't know this will move any of that up or not, probably not. But anyway, rest in peace to Larry Dolan. Do also, unfortunately, another one is rest in peace to Al Trotwig, longtime broadcaster. And we had another broadcaster that we'll get to later in the show in our hockey segment. But Al Trotwig was broadcaster known for calling a lot of different sports and Olympics. It seems like a lot of times ABC would just say, "Hey, we don't know anything about the sport. Let's give it to Al." And Al would always do a great job with it. I always remember him doing skiing. He always did a lot of skiing, and always seemed to do well with it. Also worked for Madison Square Garden, covering the New York teams, especially the Rangers and Knicks. Even back in the 1980s, Al did some NASCAR events. So rest in peace to Al Trotwig as well. But always was a great announcer. I liked what he did with the Olympics. He just had a way of making whatever sport he was calling interesting. And when you can make a sport that most people don't see day in and day out interesting, I think that's the sign of a good broadcaster. That's the sign of somebody that knows what they're doing. So those just both happened earlier today. So it's kind of sad ways to start, unfortunately. But with that, it's time to take a look in the rearview mirror. We had a lot of fun going on this weekend too, and we're going to start with our college hoops recap. Just a crazy weekend in college. We'll start with the men. Of course, Auburn maintains the number one. Remember last week I came on, talked a lot about the mid majors and gave Akron a lot of props, which was really hard for me being a Kent State grad. And they immediately did what I was happy to see them do. They immediately lost to OU over the weekend. So their 14-game winning streak is now bye-bye. And so they no longer have the longest winning streak. Yale now has the longest winning streak in Division One. They're killing the Ivy League. The Ivy League is the only league that does not have a tournament at the end of it, and so Yale now has the longest winning streak. Also, interesting note: Kansas is out, which was the preseason number one. They are out of the top 25. It's the first time in 80 weeks they have not been in the top 25. So I thought that was kind of crazy that that's how good Kansas has been over the last several years. Next week, some of our conference championships start, and that's always fun because that's where we get to see, are there any upsets where right now, you look at Joe Leonardi and the bracketology and all that stuff, they don't usually have a lot of these smaller conferences with more than one bid because I think they're always expecting that the school that is, leading that conference is going to win the conference championship. And we all know that that does not always happen. So then we'll start seeing, if any more of these mid majors get in on their own, or if it's just a one bid and that's it. I'm a MAC guy. Normally the MAC is just a one school. It doesn't matter how good the schools are. So it'll be interesting to see, how Akron does in this tournament. Miami is the other top school. If it's Akron and Miami, both teams are going to have over 20 wins, but neither one of them really have any significant wins outside of conference play. So my gut's going to be the MAC will be another one and that's it. So we'll see how all that plays out, but it's going to be interesting. I think the best college basketball game over the weekend was actually on the women's side. Number one Notre Dame went to number 13 North Carolina State in Raleigh, and that was a fun game to watch. That was yesterday afternoon, back and forth all game. NC State takes a late lead. They're up by 3 in the last seconds of regulation, and Notre Dame hits a 3 right as time expires at the end of regulation to get it to overtime. The overtime, gets a delayed start because there's a medical emergency up in the stands. So they had to wait like 10 minutes to start the overtime. Then they go back and forth again in the first overtime, and the score is tied, and Notre Dame misses a shot, and they get a rebound. They try to throw it up, and the person gets fouled, but the foul occurred like literally just as the clock hit 000. So there was no foul, or else Notre Dame would have been shooting free throws to possibly win the game. Instead, it goes to double overtime where NC State actually dominates Notre Dame and hands them their first conference loss. What I heard in that game, which was kind of a crazy stat, is that North Carolina, Notre Dame has not trailed in the fourth quarter in any of their ACC tournament games until this one at NC State, and NC State takes them down. And NC State, of course, made a great run in the Final Four last year. That I think they could do that again. That team looks like they're starting to click a little bit. On the women's side, Texas is your new number one, so that was kind of interesting, as well too. They take over the number one spot, which didn't really surprise me there with Notre Dame losing. But I don't think Notre Dame's got much to worry about. They're gonna still be there for sure. Spring training baseball is underway. Juan Soto in his first at bat for the Mets goes and he hits a home run. So that's always interesting to see how things will move through spring training. I try not to get too excited about spring training, especially this early. Most starting pitchers are pitching an inning, maybe two at most. The hitters, are getting their at bats here and there. It's just all about everyone getting their swings in. The one interesting thing I think to watch the spring training and the guys mentioned this in their show yesterday, is the ABS system is being tested in some of these spring training games, and that is where a pitcher, it's been used in the minor leagues the last couple of years, where the pitcher, catcher, or batter can challenge a strike ball call. They have to do it almost immediately, and basically they just grab their hat to say they want to challenge it. The nice thing about this review, unlike the other Major League Baseball reviews where it's kind of done in secrecy and you have no idea what they're actually looking at, they go right up onto the scoreboard, they show the little box, and if it's a strike or a ball, and then the call is reversed or not. The team, though, does only get 2 challenges per game. So if they use their 2 challenges and they are not successful, then they get no more challenges for the rest of the game. If they're successful, then they continue to keep that challenge. And again, the managers don't get to challenge it, so it's not that big time delay where a big play happens and everyone's like waiting to watch the manager and to see if he's going to give the signal to do this or whatever that they always do. But that's not part of this, so that's kind of nice to see. It's been pretty quick so far, and the couple times I've seen it, it's basically just tip the cap, they go up, put it up on screen, strike or ball, the umpire announces if it's changed or overruled. And so far, the 2 or 3 that I've seen have all been where it's been a called strike and they've had to reverse the call because it was a ball. So it's kind of interesting to see that play out. So we'll see how that goes. It's not going to happen in the regular season yet this year. There are talks about maybe 2026, but they want to analyze things. And I think they're just trying to find this balance of, catchers do a great job of framing pitches, and we go to this automated ball strike, those guys are basically useless. So I think they're trying to figure out a way to still keep the catcher's role relevant behind the plate. And one of the big things that they do is framing, balls that may not be strikes to make them look like strikes. And that would take this away. So it'll be interesting to see if they can find a way to have a happy medium. And that way too, umpires don't feel like they're getting shown up all the time, which, let's be honest, some of these Major League Baseball umpires do have a little bit of an ego about that type of stuff too. So we'll see how all that plays out. NBA side, the Cleveland Cavaliers just keep on winning. Ever since the trade deadline, they've now won 8 in a row. There's a big matchup for them over the weekend against the New York Knicks, and they just absolutely destroyed the Knicks. They're 46-10. They just keep winning, folks. I know a lot of people aren't sure about this team. Hell, I'll be honest, I'm not sure about this team at times, but I think from my time watching the Cavs, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm not going to doubt them anymore. I think they definitely will be able to handle their first couple series in the East. I think it's going to be that East showdown likely with Boston. I think they probably should be able to handle the Knicks at this point in time. But you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. So we'll see how that goes for Cleveland. But that the Cavs just keep on winning. Luka has his best game as a Laker as well. He scored 32 points, ends Denver nine game winning streak. The Lakers are 8-2 in their last 10 games, and of course they got the big rematch coming up with Dallas this week too. So that's going to be fun to see. So that's our quick look in the rearview mirror. This next segment is going to be dedicated to the Midnight Rider. He's been wanting me to do a segment of "Oh Say Can You Sing." So this is going to be not a regular feature, but I decided how to do this. And now this is going to be another test here. So my first test here, this is, let's see here if this works here. We are going to, if any bit of luck here, I'm going to try to share the screen. Windows, lucky here. Let's see here if this works. So, oh, because I got that on. Hold on, I'm coming. Let's see here. Media assets. Let's see if I can get this to look right. I'm going to try this here one more time. It worked earlier for me today, and then of course today it does not want to work, but we'll see. I really want to share the screen. I'm going to try one more time. Nope, there it goes. All right, hey, it actually worked. So I know it's hard to see, guys. I understand it's Excel spreadsheet, but anyway, this is what I did. So this is just from the Super Bowl, okay? So on the Super Bowl here, what I did is I listened to every possible national anthem that I can. Now, some of them early on, as you can see, I have the Super Bowl number here. But basically, some of these ones early on, like it was either done by trumpet or a band with the crowd singing. It was a kids' chorus. I just couldn't judge a kids' chorus. That wasn't going to be fair. So some of them I didn't judge. But basically, then from here we go up, and this was on my 50-point scale: 10 points for excitability, 10 points for range, 10 points for pitch, 10 points for speed, 10 points for style. So overall, it's a 50. Now, of course, up top, Whitney Houston gets the 50. Like that one before Super Bowl 25 is one of the best that you'll ever hear as far as the national anthems go. Then you of course have the one Chris Stapleton at 49, and then I've got 3 at 48: Jennifer Hudson, Carrie Underwood, and Demi Lovato. And a lot came in at 47. Luther Vandross gave a great one in Super Bowl 31. Mariah Carey, Beyonce, Jordan Sparks, Mickey Guyton. You can go down the list here. There are a few that were pretty bad. Christina Aguilera's is one of the worst ones. She's at the bottom of this list. She messed up the words. She was screaming at the end. It's probably the second worst anthem I've heard. We'll get to what was maybe the worst one I've heard in a different one here. Neil Diamond, which I'm a huge Neil Diamond guy. I love Neil Diamond, but his anthem was really weird. He like sang it fast. It seemed like he had somewhere to go. I think he sang the whole anthem in like 30 seconds. It was like the craziest, fastest national anthem I've ever heard. There was one with Tom Sullivan did. This was Super Bowl 10. So this is way back when it had a chorus, but it was really weird. Like, and I found all these on YouTube. So if you're really interested in seeing any of these, go to YouTube and take it out. So what I'm going to then do is, this is one thing. This is just strictly the Super Bowls. So this was only the Super Bowls of how I rated them. I had, of course, mentioned this one. Barry Manilow did Super Bowl 18. That's the last Super Bowl that my Raiders won. So that's a very, very sad thing that we've not had one since then. Man, it's been a long time since the Raiders have won a Super Bowl. I may not ever see one again. Let's be honest. That team is trash. So Now what I'm going to do is, since Super Bowl 59, I'm going to be starting this list. Now, in order for them to go on to the Jose Can You Sing list, it has to be a big game. So like I'm not going to just be looking for game 62 in the NHL stand, those type of ones. So we're going to be talking conference championships in basketball. We're going to be talking baseball, you know, opening day. Those ones will count, NBA playoffs and of course NHL playoffs. So these will be the type of anthems that we're looking for. Now, we did have our first two that went on this list, and they were from the Four Nations tournament, which we'll get into that again a little bit later on. But there were two of them that were done that day. They did the U.S. anthem and they did Canadian. Now, I'm not going to judge every Canadian anthem. I probably could when we get to the hockey, but I had to judge this one. The reason one is because it was really bad. Um, she changed the words. Her name was Chantel Krisovich, I think. I don't know. I'm probably not saying that right. But anyway, she changed the words. And the reason why she changed the words was because this game was in Boston, the whole Canada becoming the 51st state thing. So she changed some words and it was supposed to be a stab, but which I got. That part was fine, but at the same time, if you're going to change the words, you got to remember the rest of the words. And then she messed up some other words, and it threw off her timing and her pitch and the range. It just was a bad anthem. I gave it the A+ for what she was trying to do, but it just came off horribly wrong. So she 50 points. She got a big 16. The Sal was a 0 because it just was bad. Like she lost her place. She lost what she. It just wasn't good at all. The other anthem though with that was done by Isabel Leonard and the Boston Four Pops, and that was a damn good anthem. They got 47 out of the 50. Just she sang it really well with the orchestra, with the pops behind her. It came out really, really great. Um, and so that's going to be "Oh Say Can You Sing." So as we get any big ones, we'll update this list, and then I'll bring it out as far as here. But hey, I'm just happy I was able actually to figure out how to share that screen. So that's a step up for me in the right direction right there. So there you have it. That will be fun. We'll see how that all goes. But so that's going to be the starting point. I know there were a lot of great anthems before it, but I had to figure out how to start it and where to start. And I figured, well, we talked about doing the segment, so that's going to be the starting point. Is from here moving on, we'll judge them. I know there are a lot of great ones, in the past, and don't get me wrong, I love them all too, but that's going to be how we go moving forward. So, with that said, it is time to get into some hockey, and we're going to drive to net. But we first have to start with yet another sad rest in peace, and this one hurts. Mike Lang, who is a longtime Pittsburgh Penguin broadcaster. If you watched the Pittsburgh Penguins in the 90s, you heard Mike Lang. I was not a huge Pittsburgh Penguin fan, but growing up in the 90s and growing up in Northeast Ohio, you always heard Mike Lang. His voice was just there because he did all the Penguins games. So I got to hear a lot of Mike Lang, and Mike Lang most is known for he shoots and scores. Anytime the Penguins score, that would be the big thing that he would say. He shoots and scores. And then there'd be a saying that would follow afterwards, and he had some great ones. I have to admit, these are in no particular order. They're just the ones that he is most known for. He had other ones too, but he'd always would say, "Get in the fast lane, Grandma. The bingo game is ready to roll." That's my personal favorite. I will be honest though. He beat him like a rented mule. Another top one. Buy Sam a drink and get his dog one too. Scratch my back with a hacksaw. He doesn't know whether to cry or wind his watch. I don't even know what that means, but it's hysterical. It's a great one, right? Smiling like a butcher's dog. That would be another one they would say after a goal. And another one of my favorites: shave my face with a rusty razor. Um, just great ones. But there was one other one that he had, and he only did this with the Penguins scored an empty net goal, and basically it was the goal that made sure they're going to win the game, and that was simply, "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building." And so with that, sadly, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Lang has left the building. All right, on this date, February 24th, 1980, you guys know I wasn't going to let this stuff go, right? 45 years ago today, the miracle on ice did not happen. That was February 22nd. But they beat Finland on this day, and that was the actual game that clinched the gold medal. What a lot of people don't realize is that when they beat Russia, that was not the gold medal game. They did not win any medals in that day. As a matter of fact, if they would have lost to Finland, which they almost did for a little bit in this game, there's a possibility and likely they were not going to medal because the way they did the points and the way they did stuff was way different than what they do now. So there was a chance that if they would have lost this game today, that the game against Russia might not have had the same impact. And we'll get into that in the next segment too, when we get into some of the stuff going on with from the Four Nations tournament, stuff like that. But the final score in this game was 4-2. The U.S. was actually trailing to Finland 2-1 after the second period, and this is where, and I kind of put this when I mentioned the USA game. This is where my favorite Herb Brooks, who was the coach of that team. If you look up Herb Brooksisms, you'll see a lot of it. If you've ever seen the movie Miracle, you see a lot of what he said to the guys in there. And this whole idea of this tournament was to get, back in 1980, there were two hockey powerhouses, and about I think 90% of this U.S. team came from they were either from Minnesota or they're from Boston. One of those two places. That was pretty much it. There was a few guys here and there from other schools, but pretty much they either went to Minnesota or they were going to Boston, somewhere in the Boston area, whether it be Boston U or Boston College. There'd be a couple different one of those schools, but those were the two predominant states of this team. Those two did not like each other. So Herb did a great job of getting these guys to, instead of hating each other, to hate him. And a lot of the Herbieisms, basically, came from that. But his best quote was, he goes in the locker room after two periods. They're losing 2-1 to Finland. He knows that if they lose this game, with the way that Russia played earlier in the day, that they are not going to medal at all. And basically, he just says, if you lose this game, you're going to take it to your fucking grave. And then he repeats it. And then he slams the door and he goes out. Well, the U.S. goes on in that third period to score 3 goals, and they do two of them pretty early. A minute 15 in, Vilfer Kota ties the game at 2. A minute 15 later, Rob McClanahan gives USA the 3-2 lead. And then later in that third period, Mark Johnson scores the clincher to win the game 4-2 and give the U.S. the gold medal. That is their last gold medal in hockey. It was ironically, with 1960 was the last time before that they won the gold medal as well. And we've not won the gold medal since. They got close in 2012 when they lost to Canada in Vancouver. But that is the last time that we won gold. But it's that this day always means a lot to me, because it was, again, the day that they won the actual gold medals, which, it's like I said, the Russia game is what it is. The Miracle on Ice call is something that that I will never forget. But that game against Finn was equally important, and it gets lost sometimes in the shuffle. The fact that it was 2 days later, and it didn't have the build up like what the Russia game did. But they don't win the gold medal if they don't beat Finland. All right, so with that, we get into a little bit of everything here. We're going to start with the Four Nations recap. The rematch was in Boston. This was last Thursday night against Canada and U.S. And this was why, when after we beat Canada, I was excited. I was really happy to see it, but I wasn't out there talking a lot of smack. And the reason why is because I knew that there was going to be a rematch between these two teams. You could just kind of tell by the way they both have played, unless Canada really screwed up against Finland, that the likelihood was going to be these two teams are going to meet again. And it did happen. But this time Canada wins the game 3-2 in overtime. It was a great game. It was back and forth. Now, we didn't have 3 fights in 9 seconds like in the first game, and I'm not surprised by that. The gold medal / cup was on the line. You just aren't going to see that type of fights where somebody's going to take a chance of possibly having a referee eject them out. The U.S. was kind of banged up too, so I didn't see them coming out and doing that, and they didn't. And Canada chose who they started first, and they started the McDavid line, and McDavid's line just wasn't going to get engaged into that type of that thing. So, but the game was still, that first period was high paced. It was a great first period. Tied at 1. The U.S. gets a goal in the second period to have a 2-1 lead, but then Canada comes back, gets a tire, and it goes to overtime. And then the best player in the world, Connor McDavid, scores a goal. He takes advantage of the U.S. who iced the puck. When you ice the puck, and that's a hockey term, but basically it brings the face-off down into your zone, and then the team that ices the puck cannot change their players. For the most part, the U.S. had been putting out defenseman Jacob Slavin against McDavid, and McDavid honestly did not have a good game up until he scores the game winner. The reason being that he most of the time had to go up against Jacob Slavin, who is pound for pound the best defensive defenseman in the NHL right now. He just shuts guys down. He's not flashy. He doesn't score a lot, so he doesn't get the love. This tournament, he started to finally get some love that he definitely deserves. But he did what he did all tournament long against McDavid's line. But he doesn't have to place against McDavid. He gets to go out against Noah Hannafin and Adam Fox. The U.S. win the faceoff, but they don't win it well. The puck goes behind the net. They lose control of it. There's a great pass out to McDavid, and somehow Hannafin, Fox, and Austin Matthews all lose the best player in the league right in the center, and he just buries it. It's a beautiful shot. Hallebuck had no chance in the world on it, and it's over, and Canada wins the gold medal. Um, Jordan Binnington made some great saves for Canada. Look, this guy, the hockey gods have a weird way of working, and they worked again in this game, in the sense that Jordan Binnington, uh, for St. Louis, won the Stanley Cup. They beat the Boston Bruins. This game was in Boston. When they beat the Boston Bruins, it was in Game 7 in this arena. Jordan Binnington stood on his head for that game to get St. Louis the Stanley Cup. You could make a very strong argument that Jordan Binnington stood on his head in this game to give Canada the gold medal, because he made some great saves in the third period. He stones Austin Matthews once in overtime. They've got another chance on a slight angle shot, but he still makes a great glove save. It goes in if he doesn't make it. And those two saves then kind of calms Canada down. They start getting control of the overtime a little bit, and then the rest is history. So a goalie that was almost getting threatened by his own team and by his country ends up just standing on his head and showing why he deserved to be there. And maybe Canada's goalies weren't the biggest of problems people thought they were going to be. So shout out to Bennington and shout out to Team Canada. They played a heck of a game. What's crazy about this game is the viewership. 9 million watched it on ESPN, 7 million in Canada. So that was 16 million watched this game. It's the most watched hockey game in 30 years. The NHL gets a lot of stuff wrong. They screw up a lot all the time. They got this tournament right. There's been a lot of talk of, can NBA do something like this, and can baseball look at doing something like this? Well, baseball already kind of does a World Cup thing in spring training. This was kind of a one-off situation. The NHL hadn't had their best on best for 8 years. I think that played into a little bit just because we hadn't seen it for a while. What I'll be really curious about, and I hadn't seen the ratings come out yet, is how does this help the NHL moving forward? Like, they had a lot of big games on Saturday and Sunday. Did that help the ratings in any way, shape, or form? I'll be very curious to see when those come out. They probably did come out today. I just didn't have time to look them up, but we'll look at those numbers maybe next week to see is there a bump up? Because to be honest with you, so far the NHL ratings this year had kind of sucked, for lack of a better word. They weren't good going into this year, but this tournament shows that there is an interest out there for people to watch hockey. So maybe you're a casual hockey fan, maybe you're don't really follow it at all, but maybe you got into it from watching this tournament. So if you're one of those and you're kind of looking for a bandwagon team to, or maybe someone that you want to jump on board with, of course the Washington Capitals right now are the best team in the NHL. But that's easy. You can always take the best team and want to root for them, right? Like, that's an easy one. I'm going to give you a different one, and it pains me not to try to get you to do my Carolina Hurricanes, but they're just not it this year. I don't know what it is with the team. They're just I don't have that loving feeling for them. I'm going to give you the team that of the jersey I'm wearing, the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're a fun team. They're battling in the playoffs for a playoff spot right now. For the last two wild card spots, as of right now today, they'd be in. But there is like 3 points separating six teams. Columbus, Detroit, the New York Rangers are all in this mix. The New York Islanders are in this mix. The Ottawa Senators. So it's going to be a crazy finish. Now, the next big NHL game actually comes up this Saturday. They do two outdoor games, sometimes three or four, but two big outdoor games. We've already had what is the big one, and that is over New Year's Day. That one took place with Chicago and St. Louis. Then they do a Stadium Series game, and this year's game is going to be in the Horseshoe, aka Ohio Stadium, and that's coming up on this Saturday. I'll be there, but it's going to be featuring the Detroit Red Wings and the Columbus Blue Jackets in Ohio Stadium. So it's going to be crazy. it hasn't quite sold out yet, which is a little bit surprising, but the place seats over 100,000. So we'll see if by the time the game gets there, more Detroit fans maybe come down, and the weather's looking pretty good too. So I think by the time it gets to actual game time, it'll be a sellout, but it's going to be outside. It's going to have the Ohio State marching band performing in between the second and third periods. 21 Pilots is performing too, which has my son excited. So now he's getting to go to a hockey game, but he's also getting to see 21 Pilots. So it's like a win-win for him. So it's going to be a crazy good game. But this team is just fun to watch. They weren't supposed to be that good this year, and of course they had Johnny Gaudreau, who passed, was killed during the offseason. So when that happened, there really wasn't a lot of expectations for this team. Yet here they are. They're battling for the playoffs. They're led by Zach Werenski, who showed off in the Four Nations tournament as well. That he's a likely Norris Trophy winner. He had the most points of anyone there in the NHL. He's got 18 goals, 44 assists, and 62 points. Kirill Merchenko is fun to watch as well. Adam Fantilli's having a great second season. Their goalie, Elvis Merslanklins, he's an oddball type goalie. He's not your typical goalie. So he's kind of fun to watch too. So if you need a bandwagon team maybe to get behind, I'll give you the Columbus Blue Jackets as that team that you might be able to have some fun with and enjoy watching. Okay. But we did get started this weekend. The regular NHL did get back on Saturday and Sunday, and we of course had to update Ovi because he just had a crazy game yesterday. But shout out to the Washington Capitals this weekend. They had two games. They started off with a game against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's battling for that to try to get in the wild card race. Right now, they are not anywhere close, and I think that they're really likely going to be done. It's going to be interesting to see what Pittsburgh does. Getting the trade deadline's March 7th. Do they trade Sidney Crosby? There's a lot of talk of him going somewhere because he's I it just doesn't look like Pittsburgh is able to do what Washington did. And these were two teams that were kind of in similar spots going into this year. You got an aging veteran that you're not ready to throw in the towel on. You want to see them maybe be able to win again. And Washington has threaded that needle beautifully. They make some great moves, which we've talked about before, and now they're the best team in the NHL. And I didn't necessarily see them going that route, but I thought that they definitely would compete. And Pittsburgh, just with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, they've kind of gone the other way. They just can't get the right mix. Their goaltending is terrible. And that showed up again on Saturday when the Caps put up an 8 spot on Pittsburgh. They blew them out 8-3. Shockingly, though, the Caps scored 8 goals, and Ovi didn't even have a single point in that game. And I just think that kind of goes to show the depth that the Washington Capitals have on this team, that they can score 8 goals in a game and Ovi not have a single point. That is where they're going. But then they play the Edmonton Oilers, who is they're a top team in the league. They're one of the top teams out west, and they play on Sunday, back-to-back days. And Ovi went off. He did not score 1 goal. He did not score 2 goals. He scored 3 goals in that game. He had the hat trick. The third one was an empty netter, where sometimes things just break right for a player. We talk about the hockey gods. This was that moment. Edmonton pulls their goalie, so they've got 6 players out. They win the faceoff back to the defenseman. The defenseman tries to shoot the puck. His stick breaks, and the puck goes right to Ovi, and he just sends it on down the ice for the empty netter. So what does this all mean? Well, he now has 29 goals on the season. In 41 games that he has played, the team has played more. He now only needs 12 goals to tie Wayne Gretzky, 13 to break the record. He's on pace to score 46 goals this year. So that is 17 more that he would score before the season ends. And right now, he's projected to beat this record with 5 games left. It was hovering around 3 to 4, but when you score 3 goals in a game, that's going to bump it way up. So now he is projected to beat this game at home against the New York Islanders. Ladies and gentlemen, if you live in the Washington, D.C. area, and you want to see this record get broke, I would look now. Hold on, let's do this here. Let's do this live. A little live action here. Hold on. Let's look here. Because when I looked a couple weeks ago, just for fun, on SeatGeek, tickets for the Washington Capitals in April were still pretty reasonable. But I think people are going to start waking up and realizing that there's a chance that this record could break. So here are your April home games, ladies and gentlemen, if you are a Washington Capital fan and are looking at this. Yep, guess what? Never mind. I take that all back. the people have now finally realized what could happen here, because when I looked 2 weeks ago, you could actually get a ticket for the Blue Jackets game, which is April 13th, for $50. The cheapest right now that it is showing is 181. So never mind. Don't look unless you got 181 bucks. But your home games against them are going to be April 10th against the Washington Capitals, or against the Carolina Hurricanes. And then they go to Columbus on April 12th. That those tickets there are only ranging for $100, so they have not woke up down in Columbus that this could happen. April 13th, they are back home against Columbus. Tickets for that game are ranging at 181. Then they go out to the Islanders again on April 17th. And let's see here. I think I said the April 6th game, which is where he could beat it right now. That game is actually up in New York. I think I said that was a home game. So that's what we're looking at. Sorry guys, when I last looked at this, and I'm glad I looked live, the tickets for that game was actually kind of decent, but not now. So it looks like people finally woke up that he could break this record here in those last 5 games. That's where I think he's going to do it. Somewhere in those last 5 games is where he's going to get that record. So let's pull that back up here again real quick. We'll go over that, because the man is just a beast. What can we say? I mean, that's just the bottom line. So your April home games of interest. Again, right now he is projected to do it against the Islanders on April 6th. That is with 5 games left in the regular season. They are home Thursday, April 10th against Carolina. They go to Columbus April 12th. Then they are home April 13th against Columbus, and then they're on the road April 15th and then April 17th. So the last home game is that Sunday, April 13th. We'll see if he can do it or not. I definitely think he's going to do it this year, unless barring an unfortunate injury that would take it there. So, but we'll see where that all goes. So that is our OV watch, and that's it for our hockey segment, Sally. Now it's time to go down the road a little bit. And this one is an interesting one. And I don't know how this is all going to play out. I'm not sure if anyone saw this or not, but baseball basically announced that they are saying goodbye to ESPN after this season. So this season is going to be their last year on ESPN. There's been a lot of talk of what the of how ESPN has covered baseball. And look, let's be honest. I think ESPN, it goes football, basketball, and everything else. Baseball usually, I think, gets more love than hockey, but that kind of changed last week. Hockey actually got a lot of love, so that was good to see. But the two that drive, and I think this is true for sports talk, right? Is basketball and football. Those two drive sports talk most of the time. Baseball gets some, and then hockey gets a little crumble. I'm trying to change that because I love both baseball and hockey. Nothing against the other two sports, obviously. But I love football and I love basketball too. But I just hockey's my sport. It's just what I grew up on. Baseball's my second favorite sport. So who signed who you have to hope that Rob Manfred has a plan of what they're going to do, because say what you will about ESPN, they had the Sunday night game. They usually had a game on Tuesdays. They had a game on Wednesdays. Once the playoffs for the other sports start breaking down, they usually carry 3 games a week, sometimes 4 when you count the late night games. And so where's baseball going to go to get those games on the air? I don't know. Maybe TNT comes back into the mix, or maybe they work out something, a bigger deal with Fox, because right now they got the Saturday night games on Fox and FSN, FS1. I don't know. You hope that he has a plan, right? But it is Rob Manfred. I mean, it is possible that he doesn't have a plan. I don't know where he's going to go on this. It's going to be kind of crazy to see how does this play out for baseball long term, and where is he going to go. I think it's a big risk for him. Well, we'll see. You'd have to assume, though, he's got to have something lined up. There was another signing last week, and this is an interesting one. And we talked earlier about the owner of the Guards. And these are the type of signings that the Guards do that don't get a lot of publicity, but they oftentimes can come up and show. And they did one like this last year. The Guards signed John Means from Baltimore, who had Tommy John surgery. He's probably not even going to be ready until June. There's a lot of talk they may not be ready to August from coming off the surgery. But they signed him to a 1-year, $1 million deal. So it's a low risk. If he can't play or he doesn't play that well, it costs him $1 million. But they did this last year with Matt Boyd coming off of Tommy John surgery, and Matt Boyd had a huge August and September, and then October. He won a couple of their bigger games, in the playoffs. Then Matt Boyd got paid after that. So this is the kind of move that Cleveland likes to do, and I kind of like it. You can never have too much pitching, and Cleveland has shown that. They got a couple of young kids in Tristan McKenzie and Logan Allen, and another one too, Gavin Williams. And I don't know where they're going to go. I don't know how. You never know how young kids are going to do in year. Some of them had some hiccups last year in year two. So do they learn from that? So I think this is a good signing for them, and that's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. So we were able to do this in 40 minutes. That's good. So then I want to give this little shout out here, and give me one second here. I want to put this up here. So this is called, we're going to jump into some NFL here. I'm doing this here on the fly. So give me a second here, guys, because when you're doing the show by yourself here, I got to do this all here. So we're going to add this here. We're going to throw this on here. There you go. So this is going to be a shout out. I subscribe to the Atlantic. I love getting the stuff on teams. I think they have some really good beat writers, stuff like that. And this was from Jacob Robinson and Diana Rossini. So shout out to them. This is where I got this information from. This is not me coming up with this, but these are 8 big off-season questions, and I like them. And to be honest with you, I think these are pretty big, good off-season questions. So I thought this would be something fun to cover if we had time. I've got a few of these I'm going to save up here, and we'll go over as we get closer and closer to March Madness, but then also the madness that is the NFL free agency period too. So these are the questions that we need answered, and I think that these are pretty good. Number one, which contender does land Myles Garrett? Where does Myles Garrett go, and what does Cleveland get for Myles Garrett? I think Cleveland just in and of itself is an interesting situation. I just don't, I know there's a lot of guys on here that are Commanders fans, and they're hoping that Myles Garrett maybe ends up there, and that could definitely be one of the spots that he goes to. There's also talk of Philly somehow going after him, so it's going to be interesting to see. Buffalo's another one. It's going to be real interesting to see where Myles Garrett goes, and then what Cleveland does with that, and what Cleveland does with the second pick. But we'll save the draft for another day. Number 2 that they had on this list: will the Rams really move on from Cooper Kupp, and will Matthew Stafford go? It seems more and more like Stafford's going. The team has given him permission to basically talk to other teams. I saw where the Rams are talking like they think that they're going to get a first round pick for this guy. Granted, he's 37 and he can play, but he's got 2 years at $49 million. Is a team really going to give up a first round pick and other stuff to then have to pay a guy $49 million? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I would want to give up much. I think they got him a little bit overvalued, unless they're going to eat some salary for teams. Then maybe you get a first round pick. But it seems like too, they gave Cooper Kupp the same thing. So what are the Rams going to look like next year? It kind of seems like maybe they're ready to end that run after a couple more playoff runs from their championship, and it kind of seems like they're ready to enter whatever's going to be their rebuild. Number 3 that they had on this list: how will the 49ers respond to many different things? Feels like a crucial offseason for these guys, which I agree. 6-11, they're disappointed. They've got a lot of, can Christian McCaffrey get healthy? Is Brock Purdy a good quarterback? Like all these type of things, I think are really good questions that they're going to have to find some answers to. What do they do with Deebo Samuel? They're trying to trade him. I don't know that there's going to be much interest in him, and what they're going to be able to get for him. That's another one too. Yes, number 4. Like this is who actually wants to land Aaron Rodgers? Like I know I don't want him on the Raiders. There's been talk about that. The Jets have announced that they're going to move on from him, obviously. So who lands? Where does Aaron Rodgers go? And is there anyone that actually wants him? Like it's going to be real interesting to see. Does someone take the bait and go for Aaron Rodgers? Hold on here. Where did number 5 go? 4 more questions. There we go. There it is. Number 5: will the Vikings let Sam Darnold go? Like there's been a lot of talk of, well, first that they were going to franchise Sam Darnold, and then the last couple of games, the last game of the regular season, that playoff game, Sam Darnold kind of looked back like Sam Darnold again. So do they let him go? Do they bring him back? They could franchise him. They do have McCarthy from Michigan, who was out basically all last year, sitting there too. I think, can they find a trade partner for Darnold, or would they get more for McCarthy? I don't know. I don't know how that's all going to work out there, but that's definitely a heck of a question to ask. As far as where he goes. Number 6, which quarterback is going to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're moving on from Russ. There's talk that they're going to make a sign for going back after Justin Fields, but who knows? They're both impending free agents. There's been rumors aplenty that they may be one of the teams in on one of these guys that we've already talked about. Of wanting to move on to. So I don't know who is going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. Lots of possibilities out there. And then you got See, but that's the problem for the Steelers, right? They've always these last few years been good, but good enough to get in the playoffs, but not good enough in their draft. If that's hurt their draft status, I think that's again the case this year, right? So where do these guys go? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where that all plays out. Number 7, who will go number 1 in the draft, and which team will make that pick? I think it seems, Tennessee needs a quarterback. It kind of seems like it's going to be Cam Ward, but this is the fun time of year, right? Because teams just throw out so much stuff. And same thing I think you could say for number 2 with Cleveland. Does Cleveland go and take Sanders at 2 if Tennessee takes Cam Ward at 1? I still think Ward and Sanders are going to go 1-2. Whether or not it's Tennessee and Cleveland, that I'm not so sure of. I'm not so sure if somebody goes and makes a trade for one of those guys. We'll see. I don't know where those guys are going to go, but I think Cam Ward is still going to be 1. And Midnight Rider does a great job as we get close to the draft. He is the draft guru of the Sideline Junkies podcast. Like he will give you the stats of all these guys, and he usually does a pretty damn good job of saying who's going to go where. So this is going to be your place as we get closer to the draft. And Midnight Rider is just amazing at doing that stuff, and that is his expertise. So follow along closely as we get closer and closer to the draft. Number 8 that they had here, where will T. Higgins land? Seems to not going to be returning to Cincinnati. You want to talk about adding a great wide receiver to your mix? These guys list here the Patriots, Panthers, Commanders, or Broncos as being high up on the list for landing T. Higgins. But that's a game changer. Of course, look, I think about everyone that watches this show does some type of fantasy football, and that's an important piece too. Like especially if you're in a keeper league and you got T. Higgins, you're trying to figure out to keep him or not, where he lands is going to be a big part of that. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting 8 big off-season questions, and since we had a little bit of time, I thought that we'd go ahead and hit that there. But with that said, we're going to go ahead. Oh, well, we do have a comment here, so let me hit this here. What we got here? It just says Brian, Bossman BJ, but there's no comment there. It just says he's here. So if you had a comment there, Brian, it did not come through. And hopefully it wasn't because of me, because I think actually for the first time this show, we've gotten through. I was actually able to share a screen. My ugly face is showing with my big fat bald head. So like we're making progress this episode. I really feel strongly that we're making progress here. So, but with that said, that's kind of where we're at. So next week, again, we do have one big, huge game. Let me go back here for our exit ramp. There's lots of big college basketball. We're winding down to that end of the regular season for a lot of these conferences. So you got some big conference games coming up. You got the Luca versus Dallas rematch coming up. We got OV just getting closer and closer to this record, and it's going to be interesting to see what Washington does as he gets closer. Like the rumor was that Gretzky's going to start probably traveling with the team once he gets around 10 or under. I think he might wait till he gets close to about 5 or under before he starts traveling with the team. I hope that they are smart with him and they start taking him out of these empty net situations. I'm no problems with him scoring empty net goals, but I don't want the goals that are like 3, 2, 1. Those need to be real goals. Like you don't want the goal that ties Wayne Gretzky to be an empty netter. You don't want the goal that breaks the record to be an empty netter. Like that's got to be a legit goal on a goalie. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out moving forward here. Spring training ramping up. We're going to see where this all leads to going forward for everybody. But with that said, we got a lot of big stuff coming up, of course, this week here. So this is your place to be on Sideline Junkies. You got the WrestleManiac show on Saturday night. You got the passenger seat with the Gentleman Jack on Wednesdays, and then of course you got the shows that KG, Bossman BJ and Midnight Rider do Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays. The Gridiron Show for the I think they call it the greatest fantasy league in history with their fun little with the league they do. I wish I could get in that, but I'm not on the same system that they are. So my hopes of ever having Kent State beat Notre Dame in that league will have to wait for another day. But this is the place to be. This is a fun time of year, folks, that we're getting to. You got March Madness right around the corner. We're getting closer and closer to the basketball playoffs, NHL playoffs. And we're getting down to the end there, and then the next thing you know, NFL free agency is going to start, and then the draft is right there, and then it's going to be opening day for baseball. So get ready, buckle in, and this. All your shows are here to watch. The guys will be with you tomorrow night, 7:45, or very close to 7:45. And with that, again, as I always say, hug your loved ones. Make sure you tell them you love them, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Hopefully, if we are all here next week, we'll see you on next Monday at 5 o'clock. Until then, take care.